Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Royal News Network, a Saturday morning live stream. I have my glorious and amazing co-host here, Ms. Pippa, who has a new obsession. There is a little froggy that sits at the bottom of our stairs, and she so wants to eat the froggy. She's just so excited. Every time we go out, she's so distracted at night looking for the frog. So he is brown and he hides in our mulch. So yes, I realize that is neither here nor there, but I just want to tell you guys hello. And Miss Pippa says hi as well. Lots going on, obviously, in royal world this week because we do have Meghan's whole tea debacle. And I did a video on it last night, so we may have more to share about it today. We also have sort of the big breaking news of Marius Borg Høiby. He is the son of Norway's crown princess, and he has been officially charged with 23 counts, 3 very serious, and all the way up from sexual assault to traffic violations. Those are like the span of his charges. And there's a lot of interesting little tidbits about that. Obviously, the police I would imagine, have done a really thorough investigation, because if you're going to charge the stepson of the future king with all these charges, they have dotted their I's and crossed their T's. I would almost 100% guarantee you this is one of the best investigations they've probably ever run, because if they don't do it right, it's not going to be good. So I also haven't had a chance to talk about the whole, really on here, the Meghan Markle, Tyler Perry situation. So that is definitely one to check out as well. And, Catherine, as Rebecca English called it, having, being sick for quite a while before getting the surgery and then getting the cancer diagnosis. Like, what does that mean? And what does the future of the monarchy mean? We also had that whole article with Prince William talking about the future of the crown. So I haven't actually read that, now that I think about it, but I have thoughts on what I've heard from it so far and where I think it's going. And we do have a new article from the Telegraph saying that King Charles has made arrangements in his funeral for Harry and Meghan and their kids. Like, I understand it to a certain extent, but I'm also like, dude, Charles, the only thing Meghan wants from you is your money. She doesn't care one iota about you or anybody else in the royal family. Like, be real. So anyways, so much to discuss. And we obviously have Christopher Bozy speaking out last week. And yes, Per Majesty the Queen asking, please do a fashion video on the Bezos wedding. What a guest list. Yes, I actually was looking at that today, and I'm going to do that, I think, later this afternoon. Oh, can you not? Okay. I should have sound on. My mic is on, and let's see. It's showing as it on. So it might be no Nanette. No Nanette. It might be you. So, or maybe your computer's being fritzy or something. Understand. But yes, I should be on. But yeah, fashion video for the Jeff Bezos wedding. Yes, we are doing that. Because I was looking at that going, man, there's just so much. And yeah, so much going on. And I did actually want to share with you guys something too, just because I think it's really funny. And I just thought you guys might get a kick out of it, because you might notice my skin looks better on the screen with the new lens, and that is not because my skin is actually better. It is because I was looking at the video, and after a while I was just noticing things just weren't showing up well with the usual foundation I used when I was like further back and had I had a cheapo lens that was like $250. This one's like $1,200. And so I'm like, you know what? I need to use a nude foundation. So I had this one that I purchased at in Bicester Village, and I was like, oh, I'll try this one. And it's just, I feel like it looks like I have like a filter on or something, and I really don't. It's just the foundation is better. So now I feel funny because I feel like I now have an official, ladies and gentlemen, I have an official like filming makeup now I have to do. This is why they have so much on like television screens and stuff, is because the lights are so intense and the cameras are so good that you got to do the really good makeup. So I just wanted to let y'all know, because I just found that to be very interesting this week. So I was like, you know what, I'll try this. I feel like when in person it looks very caked on, but like for the camera looks great. So Anyways, and we do have a new member here. Lisa James became a YouTube member. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I hope you are having a super fantastic and amazing day here. And thank you so much for joining. I have a video I need to share with members here pretty soon because I was going to change something up this week and I decided to put it off for a little bit, but I thought I'd share it with the members what kind of the future plan is for something. So I'm being a little vague, but some know, some don't. So I'm going to put in a video and share it and kind of adjust a little bit from what I thought I wanted to do. Because one of the things, guys, when you're, you have a channel and everything, there's just so much going on. So let's go ahead though and start with the tea debacle. Oh, the peppermint tea, which makes me gag. So here it is. Here it is, the peppermint tea. There's just so much you could say about this. Like, I am so curious, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot wait to get my Republic of Tea stuff. So if you don't know, the whole situation is Think Beautifully or something figured out that there was some metadata in the system that mentioned Republic of Tea, which is a big supplier of tea. So again, I feel like people are putting so much emphasis, oh, Megan's not really doing the tea, which I totally get. But at the same time, it's like she was never going to do the tea. That was just never going to be her thing. So Republic of Tea is the group that is actually packaging this and everything. And so I think Meghan just made, again, it's just a big mistake here trying to, she's basically in a licensing deals. That's what she's doing. She's basically licensing out. This is not curated. This is not something she's put her attention into. This is not anything except for she's licensed out stuff. They've sent her options and she likes X, and so they went with X. That's essentially it. She doesn't talk about tea. She doesn't really, she only does the outdoor thing. That's the extent of it, which again, I think is kind of dumb in my personal opinion. But it's just so unbelievably silly. And what I think is kind of the big drawback here for Meghan, of course, is that this is not a company. She's not really building a company. She's not really building a brand. She's building a licensing empire, you could say. And there's some places where that could be really, really worthwhile. The problem is, and I think I saw somebody actually mention this on a conversation. That's why I like looking at the comments, because people they point out things I didn't remember. And I apologize, I don't remember what even comment they made, but this got me thinking, is that Meghan, to really make true money in this, has to actually build up the company and sell it. That's how she'll make the real cash. The problem is that if there's no piece of her business that's proprietary, so that means unique or interesting, then she can't really sell it, because the only thing selling her brand, ladies and gentlemen, literally the only thing selling her brand is her connection to the royal family, and that's it. That's it. That's the only thing that's actually selling her brand at this point. And so if she's not attached to it, the brand's dead. This stuff is mediocre slop. I'm sorry, it is. There's nothing super exciting about it. So this whole idea that she can sell this brand without herself is insane. And again, to truly make the brand sustainable and sellable, she just has to figure out, she has to actually curate this stuff herself. Now, Jennifer asks here, how is this different than Goop? Just curious. Well, I don't know that much about how Goop runs its operation, you could say, in terms of products. I mean, I'm sure they do license out their logo, but how Goop started, if you don't know, is that Goop started with a newsletter. They did that for, I think, even a couple of years. And then they moved on to doing what did they do next? They had a, let's say, list of products that you could purchase. So basically affiliate linking. That was their next step. And then once they got stable there and money was rolling in that way, then they started to do their own products. And yes, do I think they fully manufacture stuff all in-house? Probably not. That's just not realistic for stuff, but it's how you get sustainable and everything. And Meghan not doing that, not doing the slow rollout, I think it's just again an epic train wreck. It just is not working. And Gwyneth, again, big name, Oscar-winning actress, but she still had to build the company, and you build it in small steps. You don't just rush right in and think it's gonna be a billion-dollar thing. You build it, because I think, again, what the mistake Meghan made is that I believe Gwyneth would have probably, I mean, she probably would have sourced this from Republic of Tea as well, but she might have been able to make it in-house or source it all herself and put it out, because she's not in such a rush. Meghan rushed to get everything out, and because of that, you can see the things that just did not come together. There was just so much that did not go together. They didn't work. And so this tea is just eh. It's just eh. Well, I mean, especially I mean, oh gosh, you guys, it really, this literally smells like Crest toothpaste. It still really, really does smell like toothpaste. I kid you not. So there's nothing in these pieces, I think, really truly, this is lemon ginger, that really truly work in the way Meghan intended. And I think, looking at the future of her business, if it's basically that she's not making anything in-house, everything is farmed out, and she's basically licensing her name to stuff that already exists to sell, to repackage and sell herself. Again, that's what a lot of people do. But if that's where the future of the company is going, oh, then it's just it just doesn't work. It just really, really just doesn't work. And I think she's leaving so much on the table. And there is, because there's not much in house, she's also fragmenting out what she can make. So the more she fragments out, the more Netflix has to take a cut. The people manufacturing have to take a cut because she's not doing it in house. So she has to pay them. The less she's going to make overall. And this is already very low margins. So again, I don't think Meghan is making diddly squat on any of this. I don't think she's making a profit at this point. Like, I would be shocked if she's making any sort of profit beyond maybe like $10,000 or something. I mean, that might be a little bit of an underestimate, but I mean, this stuff is cheap. It's just very cheap. But at the same time, I'm sure it did cost a pretty penny. And then she does have to, like, so I mean, her margin should be pretty small. Like, every time she sells an $12 tin, she should make probably $8. But you have to give some to Netflix, I'm sure. You have to give some to this, to that. And so by the time everything comes together, like, I just don't think she's making anything off this business yet. And so it's just a big question. And Tam Fitz asks, why is Netflix indulging her? They're indulging her, I think, because of they really do think this is going to work. No, let me take that back. I think they're indulging her because of some, I don't know what you would even call it, some inaccurate notion that somehow, like, this will be a big success for them or something, or it's just basically a vanity project for Ted Sandros. It's just a vanity project. And he's willing to throw money at her because he's like, finds her like attractive and intriguing. And he thinks, and again, we've seen so many metrics that this is not the case, that the interest in Meghan, like the media buzz around Meghan Markle, somehow is turning into dollars for anyone. Generally, it's not doing that in the slightest. And so it's just absolutely ridiculous and makes no sense, but they're willing to waste millions upon millions of dollars to do it. So we'll see again where this whole tea stuff goes, but I just don't think she's invested. And that's, I think, part of the big problem here. And we do have super chat here from Heather Forder, who says, isn't jam spread also manufactured by a company that only makes it inspired by Meghan's recipe? Yes. And so this is, I think, the big problem with Meghan's brand at this point, is that I don't think she's invested in it. I don't think she really cares that much, except for the dollars and cents. And she's probably not seeing that very much of that right now. And I imagine she's thinking to herself, oh, if we give it long enough, I'll get this super big payday or something like that. But I just don't think that's true. And Heather is 100% right here. And, thank you so much again for the super chat. It's just, everything's inspired by, but how much of that is truly inspired by? Because what's fascinating again is that this was all Netflix's idea. They needed something for Meghan Markle to do. She couldn't do something herself. So Netflix gave her something to do. And in the process, what ended up happening is that they just don't have anything to grasp onto. She is not really all that inspiring. She's not really all that creative. And she keeps saying, well, I want people to feel joy and bring me into their home. And it's like, why? Why? It's just, you're just being weird. And maybe we don't want to be in your home, Meghan Markle. A lot of people don't. And I think that's the truth. Because despite all the media buzz, and again, there was a lot of media buzz around the first season of her show, it only debuted at number 10. Why was that? Because there were a lot of shows that were better than hers, and then the media buzz is more people clipping the show and talking about the show than actually watching the show. Again, I go back as well to my own viewing experience and things. I watch people react to things. I don't actually watch the thing. I've seen, and I know most of the plot. I could say if I really thought about it, I might be able to get you there. Of the plot of Velma that was on HBO, the animated cartoon, because I loved Scooby Doo. I think Scooby Doo, especially like the first season from the 60s, excellent. It's actually very good television considering. And I I was like, I was kind of intrigued, and then I saw people react to it, and I thought it looked horrible. And I watched a bunch of people react to the episodes without ever actually watching the episode, because there is such a big reactionary culture now that reacting to something is more intriguing than actually watching it. But yeah, Megan's the manufacturing of Megan's stuff is somewhere else. It's not her doing it. And yeah, she did like a video of, and pictures of her showing off like her jam and everything, but it's like it's so weird because she's making spread and she keeps calling it jam. And then it's just kind of funny if you look at her Instagram, and let's go over there for like a hot, oh, not her. It is as ever. There we go. And if you look at her as ever Instagram, it's like it's so weird because like you look at this and like besides the honey here, there are no apricots anywhere. So we have raspberries here. This was like the day or two before her new thing launched. She has raspberries. This is strawberries. She keeps showing strawberries, guys. She's never made a single strawberry product. And then she's in a kitchen. We do have tea, and this is all just the banal, like, word food puns. We had the raspberry spread, raspberries, raspberry, still a lot of strawberries and blueberries. Oh, she's mixing some sort of thing, but it's obviously not what she's selling because what she's selling is in a totally different bottle. So many pictures of strawberries, yet she's not selling strawberries. Like, why? Why? It's just really, really bad. And she has a lot of products she's inspired by, I'm sure, but they're just Netflix is basically grasping at straws, and I'm sure they've come up with something, but she needs to some point, I think, come out with a strawberry spread. Like stop like teasing the strawberries, like do the strawberry spread, because you obviously like strawberries. I don't know if you like apricots. And if you're not liking apricots, like yeah, it might have been the easiest thing to make at the time, which is maybe why they would have made it. But if Megan herself doesn't use apricots and doesn't care about apricots, why are you making apricot spread initially? Like that can be something you add as you're growing out your catalog, but initially it should be all the things you absolutely love, not something that you don't really like. It's just crazy. And so we do also have Diz Fan, who also gave a super chat, says it seems like there's a little bit of debacle over the king and his government. Keir Starmer about inviting Trump. Who's right or wrong in this situation? So that's an interesting question because obviously, anytime I talk about Trump, like there's people who say I don't like him enough, and people say I like him too much. And like, so the people who hate him don't like that I talk about him at all, and people who love him believe I don't love him enough if I'm talking about him. So all that to say is that politics is complicated. But here's the thing: the United States is the most powerful country in the world. It just is. It just is. So it benefits you immensely to have Trump over for a state visit and to wine and dine him. He likes that. And this might seem kind of, I don't know if you want to say tacky, but it seems kind of simple. But I was actually reading a book last night. I think it was called, I want to say it was called Jungle of the Damned, but that might not have been, then that might not be accurate. Anyways, it's a nonfiction account of Sir Walter Raleigh and others who were attempting to find El Dorado, the city of gold in Guyana, in South America. And what was interesting, if you read through it, especially sort of towards the middle of the book, and Rayleigh is trying to find this place, but there's of course all these different tribes in the area, and some are hostile and some are not. And so throughout this whole process, what he is doing is he's being super nice to them. Number one, he's giving them things, trading. They're trading back with him. They're giving him information and sharing items and stuff. And then he's also telling them all the time, oh, Queen Elizabeth, which is probably largely really not true, is like the defender of the people. She defend the people of Guyana and everything from the Spanish. And so he utilized their hatred of the Spanish to try to endear them to the English. He treated them very well and was very, very generous with them to the best of his ability, even though they were like on a raft and way far away from the coast. And so they didn't have that many supplies with them and everything like that. But they would trade like mirrors and knives and those sorts of things, because it's simple, but it's a whining and dining type of world in a lot of ways. And I feel like there's too many in global politics who want to treat foreign relations as an academic exercise, when really it's just about oftentimes pleasing people. That's just it. So it 100% makes sense. If you want to have the best trade deal, the best relationship with the United States, wine and dine Donald Trump. Like, that's it. That's it. Yeah, that might seem simple and easy. And of course, there's bigger discussions going on beyond that. But if you want somebody like him, or really anybody, to be happy, you make sure they're happy. It's not a difficult concept. And so I don't know exactly sort of the details of the kind of debacle going on with Charles and the Keir Starmer, although I know that there was some sort of talk of Donald Trump coming sometime this summer and saying it meant maybe Balmoral or something, and then that sort of got scrapped. But that could have been scrapped for a lot of reasons. There's obviously a lot going on in the world. But we saw this week, and I did a whole video about it, which I thought was so fun, was about Queen Maxima and King Wilhelm Alexander hosting Trump in their home. And that's like a good thing for them to do. And it was like the first time that's happened for a US president. Like, Donald Trump seemed to have a great time. And yeah, it might seem silly to go, well, he had a great time. Yeah, but then he was probably in a better mood to negotiate. Like, this is just basic 101 diplomacy stuff. This is 101 diplomacy. This is how you do it. So I think the UK should put its best foot forward when it comes to hosting Donald Trump. And I think they should wine and dine, pull out all the stops. And yeah, even if Charles isn't a fan, William isn't a fan, does not matter. That's not their job. If Keir Starmer wants to have a chip on his shoulder, that is his prerogative. But he also understands that the United States is much more powerful than his own country, so he has to bend the knee to a certain extent. But when it comes to Charles and William, their opinion, and this goes for the rest of the royal family, their opinion on Trump doesn't matter. Doesn't matter for any of the royals what their personal opinion on him is. Their job is to represent their country and their people to the best of their ability, and to be above the politics that is infused into the matter. That is what a royal does. A royal does not care about politics. That is not their job. Their job is to care about the future of their country and what they're representing. Their job is not to care about Donald Trump and not liking him or what have you. Their job is to be there to represent their people in government. And yeah. So that's my personal thought. That is my personal thought there. I don't think there's anything right or wrong, but definitely the best thing that the UK government could do on like all levels is host a great state visit. Just host a great state visit. Make sure Donald Trump has a good time, and you will be rolling forward positively. So hopefully Keir Starmer, I mean, I know Charles can do it, and Donald Trump likes royalty. He likes royals, and so it's a way to kind of be flashy. And so it's just one of those things, guys. Just one of those things. So I just thought it was very interesting though, reading this book about sort of the jungles and how they negotiated and, kind of were trying to, again, put their best foot forward, even if they had nefarious intentions. And the English did to a certain extent. They were looking for El Dorado. They were looking for gold mines, gold. They knew they had to get the tribes there on their side. And so to the best of their ability, they tried to play their cards well enough to make that happen. And it saved their lives too. When they could trade and not like take things, they had a much safer passage and more people trusted them rather than being, let's say, uber aggressive or something to that extent. So that is something to keep in mind as well, because they were running out of food at one point, and like if you are in the middle of the ocean, you have no food and you're just struggling to survive, and you're like your captain is going, well, we need to go further in. We need to go further in. And they're like, but we're dying. Food also is such a good motivator. Like they would say in the book, which I'm sure is true, is that as soon as the bellies were full, the men were like back on let's get to El Dorado. Like before they were thinking mutiny pretty seriously. And then once their bellies were full, it's like, hey, let's find El Dorado. We human beings are very simple, guys. Those same principles still apply. Still apply. There's actually an interesting kind of philosophy when it comes to even missions work. It's like you really can't talk about the gospel until bellies are full. Because if you can't meet their immediate need, like then what chance do you have in the future? Like you have to be able to meet those sort of immediate needs, like food, water, sometimes shelter and stuff, before you can kind of deepen the conversation. And I think there's a lot of truth there. Not that you don't talk about the gospel either way, but like if somebody is dying of thirst and you want to talk to them about Jesus, all they're thinking of is, I'm dying of thirst and you have 3 water bottles and I want a water bottle. That's kind of the thing. So anyways, just interesting. I don't know if you'd call them interesting food for thoughts. So I don't want to get into the politics of everything. But yeah, that's my personal thought for what it might matter to everyone. So let's move on to the Marius situation, because that again that's been super wild, to be quite honest. And it's one of those things where it's just getting, and the like the CO Korg, which I should probably go with the Norwegian outlets a bit more, but I feel like to a certain extent I kind of like some of the more, you could call it gossipy outlets a bit better here, because my understanding is that in some situations the national, or you could call it more mainline publications, are a little bit more hesitant to go into some of the details here, and reputable people talk to this publication quite a bit, so I think it's so important to go over. But so if you don't know, because it's been a while, so let's do sort of a revamping of what it looks like for this particular Marius situation. So he was arrested in early August of 2024, and he was arrested for assault and domestic violence and I think property damage, basically. Those were his initial charges, and they were related to a woman who could be considered his girlfriend, although that's kind of debated, because I think she didn't want to be referred to as his girlfriend, like more like a friend or something. So anyways, I imagine they were in some sort of relationship, but she didn't want to totally go down that route. Anyways, so he was arrested for that. And then at the time, he had done the whole like violent situation, and it was like 2 or something in the morning. And then he left the residence, and they didn't arrest him until I think it was the next day, out in front of, like, I believe it was like his old basically elementary school. It's the school where he went and his siblings went. And it was arranged, so he sort of gave himself up. And there is sort of an interesting detail to note, which is that at the time his mom actually came over to his house to pick it up before the arrest. And he said later at some point that his SIM card disappeared between at some point early in the morning, and then after, and wasn't there when he was arrested. And that, you could kind of inference his mom had something to do with it. I don't know if that's true, but that's almost like he's almost throwing his mom under the bus, because that was his story. So he was arrested, and he was given a restraining order against this woman. He contacted her again. And and this is always seemingly what happens, because one arrest happens and one kind of chink in the armor occurs, more and more people came out, and they found more and more women who had been impacted by Marius and his behavior. And this is sort of interesting. So here's the article, and it basically, and this is a Norwegian publication, so it's Google Translate, so it obviously isn't totally perfect. It says the videos that could bring him down. It says the investigation took a dramatic turn when all the material in the Homeby case was examined. The police believe that Marius walked right into his own trap. So if you don't know as well, Marius is the stepson of the future king. So that's Crown Prince Haakon. Crown Prince Haakon married Mette Marit, who is Marius's mother. She was a single mother at the time. And I do have to say, somebody put it in the comments, and I think it's interesting. So yeah, Tamara asks, sorry, reading and listening at the same time. Who are we talking about, Brittany? Yes. So this is Marius. This is the son of Norway's crown princess. So he's not in the line of succession. He's not a member of the royal family. His mom was a single mother when she married Haakon. And so Marius, though, through the periphery is sort of, he's part of the family. He was, as far as I'm aware, mostly was raised with Mette Marit and Haakon. He obviously spends time with his biological father. And so this case started just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Marius has had problems for years that I believe, this is my personal opinion, the palace has been mostly aware of and covering up for a long time. So the sort of kind of information we got throughout this investigation, I covered it a lot this summer, but as they were kind of still doing the investigation, like information sort of petered out. But this is sort of the big kind of reveal, like they did a whole press conference of what they're going to charge him with and everything like that. But what came out is that for Marius, he was throwing parties at his parents' house. So this is a royal residence, which is protected by the country, basically. So it's taxpayer funded. He would have big parties there, and items from the home would be taken. There was a silver set that somebody tried to sell at an auction house that the auction house got suspicious of and was returned to the royal family. And then the other big thing that we know for sure, I'm sure a lot of other stuff was taken and it hasn't gotten reported, is that a petrol card was stolen. So this was a card for gas, specifically for the royals, for their official engagements, and covered by the taxpayers. And that card was used, I think, almost, if I remember correctly, for about a year until they finally figured out that somebody had stolen it and was using it improperly. So you have so much going on here. And he has like trashed the place that he lives in on his parents' residence. I think there's a video of a friend of his like having a hoverboard zooming around his parents' home. So this, you can only see the back of his head, but that's him and one of his former girlfriends. And somebody's like in their house. It looks pretty trash because he's had parties there. And actually one of the women in this case, and it goes in detail here and says there's about 10 women who are included in this case, is that there was video evidence of her assault on his phone, and she had no idea that it was there or that any of it had happened. So it's sort of a big deal. And Chris says, and Chris is from Sweden, so she's kind of more closer to some of this, says, in some ways, Marius is a pseudo-royal. His biological dad has a past. Marius is not in the line of succession, but given prominence in the media since the day his single mom married the crown prince. Yes, and his father spent time in jail for, I think it was drug trafficking, if I remember correctly. And there were a lot of questions at the time of their marriage, Mette Marit and Haakon, about how extensive her drug past was. And so there's a lot going on here. And definitely for sure as well, Marius was well known for associating with the criminal element in Oslo and in Norway. He was well known for associating with the criminal element. And so he has a lot of criminal connections. Like they actually brought him in for a separate case because they were trying to get him to roll over on some of his quote unquote friends because they were criminals, such bad criminals that the police were officially investigating and hoping this guy could give them some more information because he was so close to them. And there were like Hell's Angels that were brought to the royal residence that his mother met. And so this is huge. This is just like, this is the worst, I think, royal scandal really, really in modern times. This truly is, because there is a huge question of how much did Mette Marit and Haakon know about his behavior? How much of that impacted his younger siblings, including the future queen, Ingrid Alexandra? And at an event for her 18th birthday, she said, and I think somebody pulled out the quote of Marius, basically that he was so loyal to his friends, his criminal friends. And so how much have his younger siblings associated with the criminal element he associates himself with? And how much, I would imagine in some ways it impacts more his younger brother Magnus than it does I always can't pronounce his name right. Sir Magnus. Like, how much does it affect him versus Ingrid Alexandra? And they've done a lot to kind of try to even like downplay Hakan and Mette-Marit in some of the Norwegian social media because this situation is so bad and it is truly horrible. And it actually came at a terrible time for the Norwegian royals because Marius's arrest happened the same month as Princess Martha Louise's marriage to a very controversial American shaman dude who, claims that people don't like him for issues of racism when he's just kind of creepy and weird in my personal opinion. That's just my personal opinion. He's yeah, he like has, he's sort of a guru, but like some of his healing, requires sexual contact with men and women. So, take that for what you will. I think that's a little weird. So anyways, let's go over some of what this shares here. And again, this is, guys, a translation from Google Translate. So it might not be flawless, but this does help us actually read some of this information about other royals. So CEO Korg was able to reveal an overview of all 10 women who at the time of the status of the offended had the status of offended in the extensive investigation by Oslo's police. So there are 10 women wrapped up within this case who are given the status of offended. So that means that he has offended them. Now, obviously, offense can mean a lot of things, but this is particularly regarding this situation with Marius. And so it says an investigation has now been completed where the police plan to bring charges against one and the same man, Crown Princess Mette-Marit's son, Marius Borg Høiby. And again, because he's lived this life of immense privilege, he's probably gotten away with a lot for many, many years. And this is just now finally sort of catching up with him, this deplorable behavior. And again, I feel like his mom was part of it. Sorry, I could just hear Miss Pippa. She's making her bed in the blankets. It says, but the situation was worse than that because on Friday came the most explosive development in the case since he was first arrested last summer. Marius has been charged with a total of 23 offenses, including the R word here, which I cannot say because YouTube tends to demonetize things, but you can see it right there. Abuse in close relationships, sexual assault, and violence of a restraining order. And one of the stories that we got out of this case as the whole investigation has been going on is that there was an actual situation of Marius being, it sounds like physical with one of his girlfriends on the royal yacht. And he was being disruptive to such an extent that his mother had to go down and talk him down. And so this is not a one-time thing. This is in my opinion, from what I can tell, a long series of patterns of behavior that was never, I don't think, properly mitigated by his parents. He has claimed to have drug abuse. I think after he was arrested, it came out that his blood alcohol level was high. I think he had marijuana in his system and maybe cocaine as well. And he admitted to drug use. He allegedly he did technically go to a drug rehab in December, but only stayed a couple of days left and then came back. So and he was recently in Cannes around the film festival. So this is a guy who is not, I don't think, he's not a guy who I feel like, according to what I can tell, and this is my very humble opinion, has not taken any of this very seriously and has no desire to adjust his behavior. So this is one of his ex-girlfriends who's also, shared that she dealt with this behavior by him. And there was one case as well, I can't remember which girlfriend it was, who her mom and they were trying to talk to Hakan and Mette-Marit about this behavior by him. And so again, how much of, I think I think Hakan and Mette-Marit knew a lot and had been covering for him for a long time. And I understand trying to a certain extent, figure out how to help somebody, let's say, who's in the middle of a drug crisis. But this is not drugs. This is not just drugs. This is violence against women, a pattern of behavior of violence towards women. And that's something, to me, completely different and completely I understand if he's dealing with drug related issues that you want to help him. I 100% get that. And you want to keep it quiet. I do get that. But that's not this. This is a guy who's basically all his friends are criminals, and he brings criminals to your home. He brings multiple criminals to your home where they steal things from you, and he's violent against women. One of them allegedly happened in their home, in the basement. And so it's like, you guys bear a lot here. I'm sorry. The unfortunate thing for them is that because so much of this happened on their property, that they can't remove themselves from it. They are complicit in one way or another. So, anyways, it says the police have conducted a thorough investigation with a large number of witness interviews, several searches and an extensive review of digital materials. The investigation is now complete, the police attorney said. There's now talk of double-digit number of victims, and if the police charges hold up in court, the punishment could be severe. So this is another one of his former girlfriends. We're talking about many years in prison if he is convicted of all of this. So this is not like, oh, he's one and done and stuff like that. Like, we're talking about a lot of years in prison here. And the investigation to Marius has been a demanding exercise for the Oslo police district from day one, not least because the accused is a member of the extended royal family. So this is another video here of him, and looks like alleged girlfriend. But CO Korg, and I've been told that that's mostly how you pronounce it, has been informed that Marius's own actions is what gave the police the opportunity to really send the extensive investigation into a decisive direction, and I would say overtime, because he couldn't stop himself. He had to contact his victim. And yes, my understanding is that she was not she was kind of hesitant about the in some ways the I don't think she was super interested in the restraining order, but that was part of the process, is like there was an official restraining order and he would like continue to contact her. And so his second arrest, because he's been arrested, I believe, twice. I mean, obviously a lot more of the investigation is still going on, but he's been arrested twice. The second one was for violating the restraining order. And he was like literally on a hunting trip with his friends. So like there were probably guns and there was like a criminal there. Pretty sure too. So it's like this guy, I am totally for people who are seeking, trying to help themselves, seeking redemption, stuff like that. That guy's not here. That I do not see that behavior yet. So goes on to say the police believe that Marius set a trap for himself and walked into it. Among other things, by breaking the restraining order against his ex-girlfriend, he gave investigators the opportunity they could hardly dream of. So because he violated the restraining order, they were able to conduct divisive searches, or more extensive searches, and then so they could go straight in and retrieve all the material, including Holmby's own phones, PCs, and hard drives will be crucial evidence against him at a possible trial. Because the thing is, he's recorded some of this, or maybe even a lot of this, which also I think reflects a dangerous pattern of behavior here. Like very dangerous pattern of behavior. Like this is something you should take very seriously. This is not just like a one-time crime of opportunity. Like if he's especially filming himself quite a bit, this is somebody who has a pathology here. So this is definitely something that needs to be wholly addressed. And Chris is right. Marius needs serious consequences. It might be the only way to wake him up. Seriously, there's his parents cannot save him here. I think they honestly need to distance themselves from him pretty seriously. I understand trying to still help him, but yeah. And then Trine says, hi, as a Norwegian, I'm so embarrassed by our royal house, not only Marius, but his aunt, Martha Louise, and her husband. Yeah, it was actually so bad for the royals because everybody loves Harold and Sonia. They love their love story. And you had that situation with Marius, and it was a risk. And somebody mentioned this, and I actually forgot to finish my thought about this, that one of the reasons, and you kind of understand, is that the situation with the Metamara shows, although I am fully on board with the idea of a royal marrying a single mom, I'm okay with that. I don't really have an issue with that. But what he said, and I think it's incredibly true, or whoever said this, is that this is sort of why you marry someone as a royal who doesn't really have much of a past, because then you don't have to deal with this. Metamara had quite a past, And yeah, she's been able to reform her image, but based on the behavior of her son, you just got to wonder and question how much of his behavior has been influenced and impacted by her, and how much has she indulged his behavior, because let's say she just has a different threshold for that kind of thing. And that's I totally I get that. It might seem very antiquated, but I sort of get that based on this situation. Now, I think it's difference between a single mom who obviously whose partner and father of the child was a drug dealer. I mean, that definitely raised a lot of red flags, guys. At the time when they got married, Hakan and Metamara, they were very like huge red flags were raised, and there were so many questions about her past and how much they had kind of, you could say, kind of tried to soften it. And like because of her boyfriend Marius's father being arrested for drug trafficking, how much was she involved in that? Big questions. And like it's just you just see this all play out, and you're just like, wow. Wow, is so incredibly sad. And I totally get it. I totally get the question of, maybe it's something. Azima says, "Will Crown Princess Metamart and Hakan divorce?" No, they are actually madly in love. They are pretty madly in love, and so I don't think that's it. But I understand as well why there's some wisdom in the idea of, hey, don't marry somebody who has other situations. Oh, and the other thing is, so Blue Ella said, there's a case of Marius back in 2017 related to drug charges. And there was also a situation too where that through this investigation, it was sort of revealed publicly that he has a diplomatic passport. So you can have all of us mostly have a regular passports. I don't know any diplomats on here who have a diplomatic one, but you can have diplomatic visas. So I did an internship with the State Department, and I actually had a diplomatic visa. Did not have a normal situation or whatever. And so because of that, but when Marius situation, he has a normal passport and a diplomatic passport. So that's beyond just a visa. He has a passport. And so as he is, let's say, going through a country, and let's say he has some troubles, he'll sometimes go in, this was allegedly, go in on his regular passport, exit on his diplomatic passport. So he is only supposed to use his diplomatic passport if he's traveling with his parents. But if he's not, he's supposed to use a regular one. And he was using his diplomatic one. And a diplomatic passport can give you certain immunities in particular countries. And so if he was using his diplomatic one, it's a very, again, concerning his behavior. And again, you just got to wonder, and people are wondering, how much of this is impacting the next generation, which is his siblings? How much are they associated with it? How much are they aware of it? Like, was he bringing around his criminal friends to them? And, oh, that's a scary thought. It says, in practice, he opened the door to himself, to the police, giving almost free access to what could prove to be incriminating evidence. These are pictures and photos that will be difficult to fight against. Because it's one thing, a he said, she said. You kind of have to go with whoever you believe more and who is ever most probable in that particular situation. But if they have a lot of like physical evidence, like videos and pictures of him doing something inappropriate, and they contact the women, they go, I have no clue that happened at all, this is looking like a very solid case. And again, because of who they're dealing with, I imagine this is a very solid case. So that's funny because his head is not in frame, but that's one of his girlfriends. And they've been informed by somebody who knows him well. The material contains images and video clips of a partly graphic nature and shows both identifiable and non-identifiable women. It is intended to document, among other things, serious sexual offenses. So again, I go back to this idea, guys, that this is a level of pathology that is very, very concerning. Like, it's, again, it's one thing when you have people with the crime of opportunity and they have a lapse in judge, like that, not excusing anything at all, but like you can kind of understand there's difference between like in this, which is a pathological level of behavior. if you are videoing it, if you're trying to gather evidence, not evidence, but if you, well, like, almost trophies of your crime, kind of serial killer type level. It's like he's collecting trophies to look back on later. That's what you could read into this. Again, I don't know anything, but yeah, it's very concerning. So the extensive work has naturally taken an extra long time for the police department. And again, I feel like they've done probably a more thorough investigation than they would have usually done considering who they're dealing with. And the police are said to have seized evidence, including from Holmby State at Sagum and at several locations in Oslo. So that's on his parents' property. One of the most central allegations in the case is several women, according to 8 lawyers, have never consented to the recordings. So this, like, if they never consented to the recordings, again, huge deal here. One of the women who thought she had been summoned to the police to talk about her friendship with Marius was shown the video she didn't know existed. What she saw was degrading, and he was the one who filmed it, says a source. So that's not a great screenshot, but that is his mom there. Thus, it was he himself who, by breaking a restraining order, made it possible for the police to obtain what has become the core evidence in the case. All the points included in the comprehensive indictment that is now being submitted to the Oslo State Attorney's Office were presented at a press conference on Friday. So this is the police prosecutor. So they presented it to, I probably maybe phrased it a bit wrong when I was doing some trying to do a short yesterday, but so these are the charges the police say these are the ones that are prosecutable, and they've submitted them to the attorney's office basically. And they're like, these are the strongest ones. I'm sure they had more they could consider, but these are the ones that made the most sense. And so that they have submitted them. And so we had the first two here. I just won't say, because again, YouTube reasons, which I find somewhat annoying, because if you're trying to talk about news and you're prevented from saying certain things, it makes it sort of challenging. So we have 4 cases of sexually offensive behavior, 1 case of abuse of close relationships. And so there's 3 cases here. So these are the 3 most serious right here. 1 case of abuse in close relationships, 2 cases of bodily harm, 1 case of damage, 1 case of threats, 5 violations of restraining order, 1 case of harassment of a police officer, 5 road traffic violations. And it still remains to be seen how many of the cases the state attorney general will actually choose to prosecute. So this is looking, again, very, very serious. State Attorney Sherla has been given a responsibility for further assessment. And if it is an experienced man who will put all the investigative material under the magnifying glass, Henriks Bo is the same man who was the prosecutor in the mass shooting case after the Pride attack in Oslo in 2022. So Seagor and a number of Norwegian international media outlets have followed the investigation ever since the case exploded on August 4th of last year. On the same morning of the dramatic night, his ex-girlfriend, same age as Frogner, Marius Borg Høiby, was arrested by a police patrol outside the main gate of the Crown Prince and Princess's estate in Sagum. Marius Borg Høiby himself acknowledged the events that night through his then lawyer. So yeah, he did make a statement. So this is where Marius has been living, is my understanding, and this is his parents' home. So, and he has basically like trashed this place, is my understanding as well. And yeah. So yeah, he admitted to like the violence and alcohol and cocaine that he had taken. I think they found marijuana in his system too, because they did do some sort of blood test. And he says, I have struggled with substance abuse for a long time, something I have been treated for in the past and will now resume treatment and take it very seriously, which is why you walked out on it. So yeah, no, he's just surprised he got caught. And so there was a different lawyer on the case initially, but then he changed to his attorney to Ellen here. And she said the police have conducted a very thorough investigation, most of which has been dropped. They investigated a number of victims who have not been known. There are between 15 and 20 victims. Well, that doesn't sound like, anything to scoff at here. Like, if there was just one, you could have a pretty decent way of kind of moving things in a different direction. But with all those victims, that's a lot. Seagor would like to emphasize Høiby apparently has a completely different version of the events. He is said to have explained his story during questioning and will likely come to light if he is indicted. Only if the court in a possible trial concludes after the evidence has presented, he is guilty beyond all reasonable doubt, he will be sentenced. He has a right to be treated as innocent until final verdict has been proven. So let's see if there's anything else here that might be sort of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I understand innocent until proven guilty, but it's a pretty this is not like anything to scoff at. If this was like one case and that would be okay. So this is one of the women who this that they found evidence of her assault, I think, on his phone. Let's see. Um so this is her initial statement. I was just thinking if she had anything else new that she had stated. So she says, "You're truly kind to me. I have 8 unanswered messages from the press plus a few more. I'm not in the best of shape, so I choose not to comment on today's news." So that is what she shared regarding the situation. But I can't say I'm furiously angry that I was dragged into this 100% involuntarily because of evidence on the person's phone, which the person himself took while I was not conscious. She does not hide the fact that it's been a challenging process because of what the person has put me through. I have had to go through so much exhausting stuff and have to go through a lot more, which is honestly mentally draining before I can put this 100% behind me for good. Nobody deserves this. Who the hell wants this kind of press or attention? The last thing I wanted or thought would happen to me. So that's what we have. There's him and his mom. So urgent call. So now I am curious what this one says. Urgent call. Please provide new information. Okay, in the criminal case. So that is sort of the situation with Marius. And it's we'll see where this goes, but like I would imagine this has been a very thorough investigation. And so if you're the prosecutor looking at these charges, I mean, granted there are um consequences to pursuing this case for them legally, like the Norwegian prosecutor. I'm sure there would be consequences. And so I'm sure there's a big question of where do I go here? Where do I go here? And I'm not sure, like there's not an easy answer to this particular situation. And I pray that of course justice is served. Justice, of course, in our world is not perfect by any means. But this is a guy I think who has been spiraling for a really, really long time. And I think in part because I do feel bad for him in a way because his mom and dad both remarried and they had other children. And so he is kind of where he's kind of in between two families and not really part of one at the same time because he doesn't have really his own. And so I do feel sorry for him in that way because I feel like that kind of drains you in some ways, and there might be some genetic predisposition to some of his behavior. And at the same time as well, I think there is a question, of course, of parenting, and this again reflects on Metamara and Hakan. What was their parenting like in this situation? And does this extend to their children as well? And I think probably Marius was sort of overindulged. I think my guess in his psychology is that he was overindulged because he is not a royal, but yet not part of the whole system. And so I think he is kind of sort of here and there, if that makes sense. So we do have those some clarification from Chris here, who again is in Sweden. So Sweden and Norway are very, very close. And Chris says he must receive judgment before his victims can make claims for compensation, which sort of makes sense. In the United States too, sometimes people, if they don't feel like they got the judgment they wanted in the criminal courts, like this is the case, especially in the O.J. Simpson case, if you're not aware. So the O.J. Simpson case was a huge case in the 90s, like massive. Guys, the verdict was so big. And yes, I was living in Southern California, but not Los Angeles. And the verdict was so huge because the news story was so huge. They literally announced the verdict over the loudspeaker of my elementary school. I remember exactly where I was on the playground where they made the announcement. And so he was found not guilty, O.J. Simpson, of the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson. And I'm going to say his name was Goldstein. I can't remember his other name. Anyways. And so because he was found not guilty though, the Goldstein family. I want to say it's Goldstein. I feel so bad. I don't feel like I'm remembering it. And they actually sued O.J. Simpson in civil court case and won a huge monetary judgment against him. And I don't even know if they ever really got to collect, quote unquote. And that wasn't really the point. It was just a way to, because O.J. Simpson was trying to get around paying it and stuff for a long time too. But it was a way for them to sort of get a bit out of him. Ron, that was right. That's right. Ron Goldman. That's right. Thank you guys for Kathy and Jennifer. Thank you. It's been a little bit. But yeah, it was a huge, like, it's hard to, I mean, I remember, and I was still fairly young, again, elementary school. And it was so big. They announced it literally over the loudspeaker of my elementary school. It is crazy. It is so crazy. Um, and like, I remember the PE teacher, and I remember exactly which one it was too. And she's like, "He got away with it." And I just remember that so clearly. It's kind of crazy. Like, for some reason, news stories is something I remember very clearly from my childhood, which probably tells you I should have always been in news because I liked news. Anyways, but that is sort of where we're at right now in this Marius case. There more will come out, I'm sure. I'm sure we'll get additional information about the how the case is going to move forward. And it's it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing. Bobby says that's pretty bizarre to announce at an elementary school. Very bizarre. Very bizarre. So don't know why that was made. It might have been just that they announced it because we weren't in Los Angeles. We were south, but it might have been something where there were concerns because of the there I don't know when the LA riots were in comparison to the OJ Simpson trial and stuff. But there might have been concerns of massive protests or issues or something like that. And so for security reasons, they might have announced it that way. I don't really know what I mean, just a little like random thing from my childhood that I'm like, why did we do this? And I was like, I'm in a you know, young professionals group at church. And I'm like, there's some people there, and I'm like, you guys don't even probably remember 9/11, do you? Like, I feel very old sometimes. I'm like, y'all don't remember 9/11, John Monet, the Oklahoma City, and I remember all those cases pretty much. Uh, but yeah, I just crazy. So, anyways, so that is sort of wrapping up the Maria situation. Again, I will be still watching this. And it's sort of interesting. We got two things to follow up with. One was a Diz fan, a super chat. Thank you so much. And this kind of, you could say, blends with the Maria's situation a bit. Says, it's been rumored that Prince Harry was recently hospitalized. What are your thoughts? So my thought basically is, and this is how I roll. This is how I roll. And some people may like it or dislike it, but I have found this to be a great way to manage the channel and the information I share in a way where I feel like it is accurate and I can make logical deductions based on the information. So in this case, no major outlet has reported this. And so I don't believe it. I just don't. And I understand, yes, like if somebody has released it and I haven't seen it, then I will I would review, but until I see a major publication go with it, I'm not going with it. Number one, like, let's say, Catherine was dealing with situations maybe for even a couple of years before she had her surgery and the cancer was discovered and whatever. She has the right to not share that she is having, let's say, issues and needs to go to the doctor or hospital or something like that. Like, she doesn't really have to say that. Like, I do think in the case of King Charles, he does need to say that he is king. But when it comes to Catherine, it's like, I don't think we need to hear about every medical appointment she goes to. That is a bit too much. And so if Harry and even if Harry, let's say, went to the hospital, I know some people, like, what I've heard mumbling about is that it's related to drug use. I would personally say I have no clue if that's true or not. And I'm not really interested in pursuing something where I don't really have hard evidence for it. And I don't want to speculate on something like that is just merely, Carol says it was only reported on YouTube. And, like, not that YouTube, like, people on YouTube can't be a a source of great information. It can 100%, but I'm just always hesitant to go with something that I don't feel like comes from, as of yet, a source I trust. I'm just hesitant. I look at track records, especially for, like, mainstream outlets, especially in the UK. And, like, the UK people, like, they get a lot of flack from the Americans. They're generally pretty good. They're generally pretty good. And so this whole perception that, you know, anything that comes from the actual mainstream media is wrong is just simply wrong too. But it's just, I'm so hesitant because part of the problem is, I would say as well, guys, is that there's so much misinformation about Harry and Meghan that I only go with the mainstream outlets because I know they have a vetting process and people on YouTube do not. Not not everybody does. I have my own standards I go with, and I go with basic research standards I sort of learned in grad school, which is that, and it comes to, um it reflects as well what I experienced when earlier this week when somebody was sharing just a screenshot and claiming it was from Meghan Markle's as ever website. And they're like, well, I won't share the URL until later. Well, for me, it's like the screenshot means nothing until I have the URL because I have to be able, like a lab, I have to be able to recreate your results. If I cannot recreate your results, there's not a story there. And we've had situations where there was like this post allegedly from Megan on her Instagram that said F you that appeared and disappeared. And I'm like, it's so totally fake. And the username was even wrong. It said Meghan Markle and said Megan. And then there was a second situation where like the post about from Catherine and Williams, well, now it's Catherine and Williams. At the time it was Kensington Palace's Twitter or X or whatever talking about how Meghan Markle used a surrogate and people go, oh, that's proof. And it's like, no, 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 that's totally fake. There's a lot of fake information out there. And I go with generally mainstream outlets because they at least have to go through some sort of legal vetting process. And I don't know all the vetting process, but what I learned from a lawyer I worked with is that like I would try to put something in an article I was writing and he says, well, you need to soften the language here because he's like, we know this is true, but you can't say that because it legally puts us in potential hot water. Sorry, I had a sniffle there. And so when it comes to this situation that you're mentioning here, Disfan, I don't have any evidence for it. I don't have, and I'm not putting your post back on there just because I have another thing I saw and I just don't want to lose it in the feed. And without evidence, I do not want to go down that path at all when it comes to Harry. I don't know. I know some people were, Dan Wooten was asking me about Harry's drug use. Sounds like I don't know if the guy uses drugs. I don't really want to speculate. Didn't even occur to me until somebody said it, probably because I don't do drugs and start to think about drugs because it's like, and I've never seen him look strung out. Like there was a period of time where you could see Cara Delevingne was probably strung out on drugs. Like it was just like she was at an airport. She was being super weird. She's like hanging over like a zombie. Like her drug use at that point, in my personal opinion, and again, I have to say that for legal reasons, was very apparent. And I think she would agree. It was like you could obviously see it. I've not seen any of that with Harry. If he indulges on the side, a lot of Hollywood people do. I personally am not a fan of any of that. I don't know if that goes somewhere or not, but it's not my place to say, really. It's not my place to say. And I am so hesitant to go with anything as serious as saying, which I think is what I've heard is that he was in the hospital for like a drug overdose or something. I'm so highly hesitant to go into anything on that beyond saying what makes most sense. Are you seeing other outlets go with it? Because I was surprised for a second because GB News did go with the screenshot story and didn't share the URL. And so I did think they were being shoddy journalists and not investigating, when in fact they had seen it from somewhere else and just didn't share the URL, which I don't know why. Because again, it's actually part of your job as a journalist for me, like as a reader, to be able to follow your steps, how you got from point A to point B. And so that was on them. So I didn't believe it. And I don't consider them a super reputable outlet anyways. But, if something's in the Telegraph and the Times, I take it pretty much as accurate because the Telegraph and the Times are highly vetted. They are highly, they have to go through scrutiny. And so there's some things they don't publish because of the legal consequences potentially of doing it if they don't have enough hard evidence to really, let's say, prove their case. And so somebody said, I remember seeing a comment recently. Somebody goes, well, it was something to the effect of, and I can't remember quite how they worded it, but like they felt like I wasn't being like forceful enough or like direct enough in my critiques or stuff of Harry and Meghan, that I had been like toned down or something. And it's probably in some ways, yes, because my mom's like, well, sometimes you need to tone it down a little bit. And she's probably right. But also just for legal reasons. Like I tried to say, hey, I can see their side, but I can also see this issue, just because I'm trying to give a holistic picture so I can be a better, let's say, journalist in some ways. So I'm not just simply attacking them. I'm like trying to, you could almost say, massage things in a way where I can see all sides, but yet I can still critique, because that way, again, it actually helps me in the long run. If anything were to happen, that they can say, well, she was actually pretty nice. I guess you could say. I don't know. Anyways, so we do have House Mosul, and this is what I wanted to get to. Says, I know employees at that Santa Barbara hospital, and this rumor is clearly BS perpetuated by YouTubers who often lie. So I won't say whether truth or lies or not, but guys, there's a lot of like, I would say any YouTuber take somewhat with a grain of salt in some ways. Because again, they don't, totally understand where the mainstream outlet doesn't get things right. 100% they don't. The Joe Biden mental decline story, 100%. That was obvious, and they purposely misled people and called people terrible names for even suggesting the fact that the guy wasn't all there when he was obviously not all there. And that's no longer politically inaccurate to say, because like you can't avoid it. Like it was 100% that he was not. Like everybody can see that now. That's not a surprise to anyone. But like people would, try to ruin careers over just suggesting that. So I totally understand why sometimes like you see something with your own eyes, you're like, oh, I can see it. But part of the reason was I could see Joe Biden's mental decline. I could see connections to what my grandma experienced as she got older, who passed away a couple years ago now. I could like see the connections there. So I could physically see it. And there's a lot of stuff, guys, that's said about Harry and Meghan where there's no evidence for it. Like you need, like I would suggest, this is just my suggestion, is somebody says something. Well, if let's say they say so and so will happen at a particular period of time and it doesn't happen, take what they say with a little less trust. That would be my suggestion. And if no other outlet is going to report on this, that means they don't have enough evidence to, and they can't risk it for legal reasons. And that's probably a good indication the story is not true. Because if they can prove it, they'll go with it. And yes, I know people don't like the mainstream outlets; they don't question them and stuff. But I would be careful. I would be very, very careful. I would 100% treat some things with a grain of salt. And that's why, guys, what I do is I show you the articles. I read directly from them. And yes, I said a lot of things about the Marius case, but everything I said, you can double check. Like I might have gotten some of the details wrong, but I have a pretty good memory for information. So you are welcome to double check anything I say. I always recommend you do it because I'm going with what we have reported. And I'm just saying, like, my speculation in the Marius case is that he has a pathological behavior in this area. And you can just deduce that by he's taking videos of his crimes. That's pretty pathological. Like I'm making obvious deductions. Like even when it came to Catherine's surgery, I said at the time, and I got a lot of criticism from some people for it, like that she had major surgery. Well, she's going to be in the hospital for 2 weeks and recovering for several more weeks. So I was like, that's pretty major. And some people go, you don't know that. And then in her official announcement for her cancer diagnosis, she said, I had major surgery. Well, you can deduce that because of the evidence that she gave us of the long recovery time. I've been in the hospital, I've had surgeries, and they'll get you out as soon as they can because of infection risk, of especially with Catherine, of risk of her information getting out there or an unauthorized person getting near her. Like that's why they try to get you out of the hospital rather quickly. And so this idea, I guess you could say, of something I just always say, yeah, and Asma says here, trust but verify. I would verify. I would verify. And if there's nobody else coming out about it, I would question it. Uh, you know, that's just what I would do. That's just what I would do. And that's that's just what I would go with. That's just what I would go with. Like I have a and if I'm late to a story, I'd rather be late to a story and know the facts than be early and get it wrong or just have a little bit and stuff. So I will always be hesitant. Always be hesitant. But yeah. So that is my thought there. Yeah. Aw, Chatty Cathy says, "It bothers me when people jump on you for not going to for the conspiracies around the bump and other things. I respect how reasonable you are in your commentary. You keep being you, Brittany." Why, thank you. Yes. And I've always said I'm gonna do things the way kind of I was taught. And as a historian, like these are the things I learned in grad school. And we did a whole class, which I would actually recommend that's actually be part of like college curriculum, is understanding logical fallacies and stuff. And we had a whole class. I mean, it was called historiography, but one of the books we have, which I still have, is called Historical Fallacies. And it goes into how do you look at research and information and take the bits that the author is telling you and stuff like that to deduce, okay, is this information good information or is this information bad information? Because you can actually sort of test some of that stuff out. And oftentimes it does hold up pretty well. That's why talk about the ad hominem fallacy. And there is like, the confirmation bias fallacy. There's a lot of fallacies out there and anybody can fall into them. And it's like, and I don't think everybody is immune from it, but there was actually an interesting piece, and I did research for another job, and it required me to like look at research and mostly scientific research. And one of the papers I looked at, I realized that everybody who was reporting on this, and I found, I want to say 15 to 16 issues actually with the research itself. There was a lot of like holes in the research. But one of the things I found most interesting is that everybody who wrote that paper had a financial gain from proving something worked when maybe it didn't work as well as they were saying it was. So everybody was in that research was flawed because at the end of the day, they all make money off of it. So if they all make money off of it, of course, they're not going to tell you maybe the full truth because that's their cash cow. And so you have to think of those things when you look at research and information people are giving you. And so that's why, sometimes from CNN, if they're particularly light on a liberal and hard on a conservative, I question a lot of it because it's like, I know they're liberal. So, and even Fox News, I've questioned something they said because it's like, I know they're conservative and the story was conservative and it ended up being true, but I questioned it because it's like, well, like, did they really know that? I don't know. Again, all these things just come together and just so important to think about and consider. And I just always recommend taking some time, doing a little bit of research. If nobody else is going with it, it's probably not true. That would be my thought. Liz East gifted 5 Royal News Network memberships. Why, thank you so much, Liz. I'm sure some people will really, really appreciate it. And it's just so nice to have a members community. And I was thinking about doing something and I need to do it. Oh, and Netflix is actually showing the Royals, but I have to be curious if anybody has ever watched The Windsors, the satire. I think that would be fun to watch as a group because it was actually pretty funny. It's been a little while since I watched it. So maybe we'll do a little bit of um like a watch party or something. A Bertassa says, "Hello, Brittany and everyone. Your cautious approach to reports and speculations and one of the reasons you're awesome. I've said other YouTubers like the Sidley twins refer to you as someone to trust." Why, thank you. That's so kind of them to say. Yeah, somebody else said that in a comment recently too. And that means so much because I want to be someone people can trust. And that's why I don't go to every speculation story because at some point you might end up being wrong And if you're wrong too often, this is kind of like the Meghan effect too. Once you're kind of wrong too often, people tend to question you more. So that is just where I stand. Creative Chaosify says this story is so juicy, someone would have notified TMZ if it was true. Exactly. This would have gotten out if it was true. That's just I just can't see how that would not be the case. There's a lot of people out there who is more than willing to make a bit of bucks to share a story. So, yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to one of the other stories here. And this is from the Telegraph. So again, I was consider the Telegraph to be a highly reputable source. And this definitely was a little concerning. And I understand where Charles is coming from. I understand where he's coming from. I understand what he's trying to do. And I agree. And then at the same time, I disagree. So this is from the Telegraph, Prince Harry and Meghan at the heart of the King's funeral plans. So again, Telegraph and Times, I would say, are the two best publications for royal reporting. I would argue they are. Obviously, when it comes to People magazine, Buckingham Palace talks to them, I would say a fair amount, because they're the biggest, you could say one of the biggest US royal outlets. But when it comes to in the UK, it's the Telegraph and the Times. And so it says, there has been increasing talk of olive branches and reconciliation between the king and Prince Harry. Much of this has been conveyed on the Sussex's side, at least, or the Duke of Sussex, through television interviews, his emotion, anger, and frustration on full display. Okay, so number one, if you're going with somebody who's doing interviews, that is probably not the best thing to do, because Harry is emotional. You almost need to be the non-emotional person in the situation. And I feel like Charles is going to be kind of a bit emotional on this topic. And I understand why, but Harry's the one who's been at fault for all this. And yeah. So it says, from Buckingham Palace has been little said on the record. Beyond the occasional frustrated shrug, royal aides have kept their counsel, determined not to fan the flames of a deeply personal rift in public. And that's probably pretty smart, because honestly, when it comes to this whole rift crazy situation, it doesn't really benefit them at this point to engage. It just doesn't benefit them to go down that path in some ways. And I think that's wise. It says, but behind the scenes, the king is very much hopeful that he'll be reunited with Prince Harry and he might build a relationship with his two California-based grandchildren. Okay, so Harry might like that idea, but I don't think Meghan does. And the fact remains is that I think in this particular situation, Harry is the guilty party. And Harry needs to be the one who bends the knee, basically. This whole idea that Charles should be the one, oh, Charles needs to reconcile. Charles needs to be the one. I'm so sick of that. That is a terrible example to set, because you're just reinforcing Prince Harry's bad behavior. You're just supporting his brattiness, and he needs to be humbled. The father of the prodigal son didn't go chase down his son. His son had to come begging back to him. And I think that is how it should be. Charles is the offended party here. And I 100% understand that he wants a relationship with his grandchildren. But Harry's wife, in my humble opinion, is a bit psycho. And so because of that, you can't reason with crazy. She's never going to want to relinquish any sort of control. And so in this whole dynamic you have here, Charles is in a lose-lose scenario. No matter what he does, he's going to lose. Because I imagine still if he reconciles, Meghan's going to put roadblocks in front of meeting the kids. Unless she gets what she wants, whatever that happens to be. And so, and Harry as well will try to manipulate his dad into particular things. And so it's none of this is going to benefit Charles in the slightest. None of it is going to benefit him. And you cannot reason with crazy. And that's what Harry and Meghan are. They are loose cannons. They are wildly, I would argue, ineffective in some ways. And Harry is the one who has done the damage. Harry is the one who destroyed things. So why is Charles the one to extend the olive branch when Harry has been the offended party? Again, I go even back to a biblical example here. not just the prodigal son and father, but it's like in the Christian world, we have sinned against God. So why would God come begging to us when we've offended him? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. And I feel like this is sort of the same situation here. Because if God just goes, "Oh, yeah, sin is just fine. I know. Oh, you're just trying to, oh, you want to reconcile with me? Oh, that's fine. Like, you know, let me extend an olive branch to you." Like, I'm sorry, I'm very much kind of not really totally being theologically sound here, kind of trying to get to an example, but God bridged the gap by obviously Jesus coming to earth and sacrificing himself. But at the same time, like, we can't be reconciled until we ask for forgiveness. Like, we have to be the ones who do it because we are the party who has offended him. And yeah, that's just how I go. And so as opportunities would seem to present themselves at the next iteration of the Invictus Games. And how they say the Duke's Invictus Games is a problem because the Invictus Games should function without Harry. They should not need Harry to function. If Harry is the sole reason they're functioning, then this is a wildly unhealthy thing that will collapse as soon as Harry's not involved anymore. So, due to take place in Birmingham in 2027, the King's 80th birthday celebrations the following year. So, the King turns, I guess, 80. Let's see. So yeah, he'll turn 80 in 2028. So this is not like I thought this was, but Queen Camilla turns 80 that year. Sorry, I'm just like trying to think, what are they trying to get out here? It says, given this set piece, royal events are planned years in advance, it is possible to cast the net further into the unknown. Indeed, the telegraph can reveal the king has factored not only the Duke of, but the Duchess of Sussex and their two children, Prince Archie and Lilibet, into the heart of his funeral plans. And that is nice. And I do think that's something Charles should do. Charles shouldn't like shun Harry from the grave. But at the same time, you're dealing with kind of the crazy factor with Meghan is that if you give her an inch, she'll take a mile. And it's just like give Harry the chance, give the kids a chance, but really no reason to really bring Meghan into any of this. It says, whenever the time comes, the monarch is adamant that his youngest son take his rightful place at the center of his family, perhaps mindful of that final chance to create family harmony. The thing is, though, with Charles gone in this scenario, you're dealing with William. William at that point, I don't think will care at all about Harry. He's to the point of apathy with his brother. And yes, a funeral will make people rethink things, but if Harry's still going, "Oh, my poor wife, my poor kids, oh, they're so targeted and everything." William's going to just go away. He's just going to go away, Harry. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what you want. Anything, go away. That would be his thought. And it doesn't remove the fact of how much damage Harry has done to William and his family in some ways, how much he has hurt them. And if you are the party who has offended everyone, then you need to be the one, I think, to offer the bended knee, lower the head. And Harry's not going to do it. And if Charles does it and Harry is not forced to do his part, then you're just, again, reinforcing horrible behavior. Harry won by doing the wrong thing. You don't teach that to children. Don't teach it to adults either. It says there is no suggestion the king's wedding will not continue for many more years. Planning for such a set piece is common. Very, very true. The Telegraph understands that Sussexes remain enveloped in the king's funeral plans at the highest level, with the Duke expected to walk side by side with his brother, by then the king, at the forefront of the somber processions through the streets of central London. I don't even know if that would be prudent. It depends on how things go. And honestly, Meghan might not even be part of it by the time Charles dies. It all depends. Harry and Meghan will be invited to take part in the family vigil during the Lion's State at Westminster Hall and play a prominent role alongside the most senior royals during the funeral service. Arrangements have also been made for Archie and Lily to attend the funeral service at Westminster Abbey, as well as the committal at St. George's Chapel, should they wish. I mean, part of the problem is, though, is that those kids don't know Charles from Adam. And that's been Harry and Meghan's decision. Like, Charles wants a relationship with them. So does Meghan's father. But no, Harry and Meghan, they're like, nah. So his state funeral is also codenamed Operation London Bridge. This was sort of interesting, which I did not know. And his his official period of royal mourning will be reduced and into the line of national mourning. So this will begin on the king's death and last until the day of his funeral, 10 or 11 days later. And there will be no train this time, as there was possibly last time with Queen Elizabeth, since she died in Scotland. And there was one other thing here where they mentioned something kind of together. So again, Charles wants his final public act to be bringing his family together, but it's they're not really together. Like, it's fake. That's kind of the thing. It's just fake, and that's what I just don't like. It's just like, so what? You got the kids to be, having fun for 5 seconds, but that doesn't, again, negate all the things Harry has done over the years. So the code name for Prince William's funeral as the heir, in case you were curious, is called Operation Menai Bridge. I just thought that was, while his elder sons were Operation Clare Bridge. So that was Williams so this would be Williams now, Menai Bridge. And then George's one day will be Operation Clare Bridge. So I see this story and I, of course, am not surprised, but I'm also, once again, rather annoyed. I just don't think Charles should be rolling over and giving Harry his belly. I just don't think he should. And I don't think it is healthy. Like, I just think of, like, Charles, what are you setting up for William in his reign if you give in to Harry? Harry is just going to attempt to go in that direction. It's just crazy. It's just crazy, unhealthy. And Charles needs to, I see what Water's saying here, and I've said this before, Charles needs to be a king in this. So I think Charles needs to be more of a king and less of a father here. Think about the future. Harry is not part of that anymore. And yes, the funeral is a personal moment, but you had to be so careful not, again, to overindulge Harry and Meghan. You got to be careful not to do that. And I think that's something that might be kind of hard, especially if Harry and Meghan are given, like, a prominent role, because they sort of want the magic of the monarchy back, and that's the one thing the royals shouldn't give them. Don't give them it. Don't indulge them. They're like toddlers. You got to treat them like they're toddlers. Like, that's the only way to deal with this. And so and Lauren says you can't tell him how to feel about his son. That's very personal. But the thing is, as somebody who is head of state like Charles is, there is, I think, a public, let's say, I don't know if requirement is the right word, but there is a public part where we do have to say, hey, you need to do things a particular way, not for this personal dynamic, but for the future of the crown, because the crown is more important here in some ways than this personal dynamic, which is already deeply, deeply fractured. Do you really think your death at this point is probably going to fix things? No, it's probably just going to exacerbate and make things worse. Prince William will be king. He'll want to distance himself, I'm sure, even further from his brother. His brother can, I'm sure, expect a lot of pain once his brother becomes king, because William needs to represent the crown. I think there is something to representing the crown, and sometimes you have to put your crown ahead of sometimes family, and that's not easy. So we do have Liz E, been a member for 17 months, says, well said, you cannot reason with crazy. Meghan Markle will only show if she can monetize it somehow. Exactly. I say that quite a bit. You can't reason with crazy, because it's just like I try to come up with what I think are fairly logical, like, plans for Meghan, and somehow she, like, puts any normal semblance, and it's because she's just not really able to factor together a smart plan. And so she's all over the place. And so it's just you can't reason with crazy. You can't reason with it. I was just gonna see if Miss Pippa was around. I don't think she is. And so yeah, it's just Megan is just not going to I just don't think she's helpful in any situation, pretty much. All right, and Liz E says here, story about Invictus and Royals all to get sponsors. I mean, maybe, and thank you so much for the super chat. So the problem with the Invictus games overall is that I don't think there's an audience. And the further things get away from wartime, the less of an audience there is. That's just sort of fact. And I think some of the competitors love it, but these are like a small minutia of veterans, and somehow like millions upon millions of dollars is being poured into this thing. And I don't want to be rude, but I just the whole point of the Invictus game should be in some ways at least self-sustainable, and they can only get butts and seats by bringing in big musical artists. That's the only way they got any butts and seats last time, is they brought in the big musical artists. It was just about the veterans. They couldn't get the butts and seats. And I think because they're so worried about getting butts and seats, they actually downplay the veterans to upplay the musical guests and stuff because that's the only way they can get attention. So that is the situation there. So Wendy says, I think this article is wishful thinking. I think it's definitely wishful thinking on Charles's part. And I just don't think it's there. I don't think it's there. Again, I do believe that this is good sources. And so I believe it's kind of, probably pretty accurate, but this is just wishful thinking. And it just reflects again, Charles, it just like, I understand his desperation to have a relationship with Harry, but you got to face the reality too here of what Harry and Meghan have done over the last several years, and they just don't care. I hate to say it that way, but they just don't. Especially Meghan. She does not care about Charles, about the monarchy, about I would argue in some ways her children. She just doesn't care. She's only in it for herself. So I just don't think that'll get anywhere. Tamaya says Sir David Beckham should be invited as a Victus patron and Harry is kicked to the curb. That would be nice, but I mean, I just don't know really. Like people think like it's not just a patron problem. It's just that if you remove any sort of patron from it, nobody would attend. And the reason the Olympics works is because it's not focused around one single patron. It's all these competitors together. And so if there's no competitor, like the competitors are what drives it. And that's what should be what happens with the Invictus too, is that the competitors, and as a spectator, I am interested in watching these competitors compete. But if there's no that, if the press is just going there, which is pretty much true, the press is just going there for Harry and Meghan, and that's it, then the Invictus Games, I feel like their mission has failed because it's become about their patron and not about the competitors. Because the competitors are what's going to drive this. Harry, once he dies or he gets bored or what have you, once that goes away, like the Invictus Games dies immediately because nobody would be interested in it anymore. I think that's kind of harsh, but that's kind of the situation too. So let's keep looking. So yeah, Sir Scroll a lot says David Beckham had hand surgery. He seems to be doing well. Yeah, they did share a picture of him in the hospital. So hopefully he's recovering pretty well. It seems that he is doing pretty good. So that is exciting. I do also want to like mention something real quick. I don't think it came up on here, but there was some talk about Maxima, Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, that she was mocking Trump recently at the state visit towards the end there. And I really don't think that's what it was. And she did something weird with her mouth. I don't know if she was saying thank you or doing something like I don't know, but I just don't think she was mocking Trump to the press. That would be kind of crazy. She's been in the public eye for 15 years now. I don't think she'd do something that ridiculous. She's more of a professional than that, or at least I would definitely hope so. Definitely hope so. So we shall see. We do have a now I can't remember the name of the the venue. But William has announced like where the venue will be for like it's the Museum of Tomorrow in Brazil. And so that will be her sort of, you could say, next thing. So, and we do have, it was so nice to get the puppies for William, but PETA was ridiculous. And so many people agreed, like PETA criticizing William and Catherine for having puppies is ridiculous. So I know there's obviously some people who are very passionate about people only getting dogs and animals from shelters. And I totally understand that. But like, I'm sure these were bred by James Middleton. I'm sure James, because I read his book, and so James is very involved in dog breeding and stuff. And so I'm sure he was the one who kind of got this together. And some people don't want a shelter dog. They just don't. They would rather have a dog where they know what the breed is. They would rather have a dog since the dog was a puppy. And that is sad, you could say in some ways, but like realistic. You're just, and I don't like the idea of that somehow by Catherine and William not having their dog bred, that somehow they're doing something better for the, like that they could be fixing the shelter situation if they didn't bring their dog. Like that's just stupid. I'm sorry, that's just stupid because the people who are going to buy their dog were probably never going to buy a shelter dog. Like it is just so like sorry, it's just like I'm trying to think of a word here because this is like just so stupid. This is such a stupid position of PETA to take, in my personal opinion. So, like when it comes to me, guys, I personally would only like if I could get a dog, and this was true. This happened actually in with the guy who has a guy and a golden. If I was to get another dog at some point, I'd probably get a golden retriever, even though I'm allergic, because I just really, really like the breed, and that's what we have, and they've all been really, really good dogs. I do like my dog too, so I maybe get another one, but I probably would be pretty hesitant to get a dog from a shelter. And if that's what you love to do, 100%, like that is the best way to go. But sometimes like I would just prefer to know what I'm dealing with. Like I wouldn't mind adopting a cat. I don't know why a cat doesn't bother me quite as much, but like a dog, like I'd just want to make sure of a couple of things. And definitely what I don't want is a dog that has um let's say pit bull. Sorry for all the pit bull people out there. I don't want a dog with pit bull in it. And I did actually have sort of an interesting side note because my mom was telling me about this is that there was a guy from The Bachelor and they got a shelter dog, and I think they've usually tried to go to shelters, and the dog like completely and utterly attacked him. Like he had to have surgery and everything. Like I think the dog damaged his hand or his arm or something like that. And you just can't, because you don't know their full history, you can't, you just don't know everything. And I feel like especially with children, you should be very, very cautious about getting a dog from a shelter where you don't know the history, or that you're get somebody who's very young, because you just don't know what they've experienced. And like the worst that would happen is that your dog would attack your kids, and that would be terrible. So that's all to say. And again, I know some people will deeply disagree, but the thing, guys, is that we should be able to have discussions and agree to disagree. But when it comes to these dogs, I see no issue with them breeding puppies whatsoever. I think it was an incredibly stupid decision of PETA to make. And because some of these dogs, one of these dogs might go, and one of James's dogs, I think he said one of his puppies ended up going to a program as a seeing eye dog or something to that effect. And so the characteristics that they're breeding for, like that's what you get here. And that's sometimes it, like it's just so important. I think if you want a dog of specific breed, of a specific temperament that fits your lifestyle, do what you want to do. Go to a shelter if you can do that, or sometimes find a breeder. And it's the human factor that is the issue with the dogs, that other people are bad pet owners. That's sort of the issue. So anyways, I just thought this though was the cutest picture. I'm so glad we got confirmation of the puppies. Like the son was the first to report and we can only see 3 here, but how cute are they? How cute are the puppies? They're so cute. They're just so, so cute. And PETA is absolutely ridiculous. PETA is absolutely ridiculous. They're not helping anybody. Catherine and William, here's the thing. They're being responsible pet owners. They bred Orla to, I'm sure, a dog that had been vetted by James Middleton. James Middleton, I'm sure, facilitated all of this. And he bred their dogs for specific qualities that hopefully go to amazing homes or maybe working relationships and stuff like that. So, yeah. And a great thing DS pointed out here, which I totally forgot, and a great to point out. It says, do you believe the palace was mocking Harry and Meghan by commenting on that baby bump video posted by Jamie Lang and Sophie Abu? Your thoughts. So let me see if I can find it really quick. And so guys, funny story too. I am familiar actually with Made in Chelsea that Jamie was on. Like, I think he's still on it. I don't know if it's still going on or not. But he was on there for a long time. And I think, to me, honestly, guys, this is funny. This is funny. And here, let me show you. So, and even though they weren't supposed to take videos, like this is actually cute. This is actually cute. Like if you're going to do a baby mama video, this is a video to do, in my personal opinion, because it's kind of cute. It's not vulgar. Again, Meghan would have been fine until she got low and started grinding and lifting her dress up. But yeah, the funny thing is, this is, guys, the legit royal family Instagram account, the legit one. It's the legit one. You can see when you put here, it's real, saying we see you with googly eyes and a little winky face. And I think you could definitely see a little bit of that cheek. And some people were funny because they were just like, ah, it's so disrespectful. And I somewhat get that, but at the same time, people need to be able to have a little bit of fun. And part of the thing with the royals is that people think they're stuffy and they don't have fun. And so I actually think this was a stroke of brilliance because it showed that the royal family can poke fun at itself. It can go, we see you, winky face. That's actually a stroke of brilliance, guys. That's actually from a PR perspective. And it goes to show too that there's not really an issue with the idea of doing a baby mama dance. That's not the issue. But the situation really is, in some ways, is that it shows that the royal family is aware of certain things. And like they are sort of, in some ways, you could say, mocking Harry and Meghan. And this is actually and definitely Jamie and I think and Sophie are mocking Harry and Meghan. They're 100% mocking Harry and Meghan. That's what they're doing. And the royal family's getting in on it, which is like, oh, and have fun with it. There's some times, guys, where it's just about having fun. Just having fun. But again, I go back to the Meghan thing. If she had just shown us the first part of the video, I think that would have been okay. And yeah, as Babette said, they weren't dancing like they were on the prowl in the club. They weren't. This is, to me, a cute dance. Like she's barely moving. And I'm sure they could both probably grind. Like they're both on reality. They were on reality TV shows. So I'm sure they could party hard if they wanted to. But this was about like being cute. And this is what Meghan missed with her baby mama dance video, in my personal opinion, is that she wasn't cute. She was vulgar and vile. Like once she, and like even the beginning of her dance too wasn't as cute as this. And they should have been dancing together. Like instead of Harry doing his weird like cameos and stuff, Harry and Meghan should have been dancing together like this. Because this is actually, to me, somewhat cute. They're dancing together. They actually look like they are having a child together. Whereas Meghan Markle, so let's go ahead and maybe find this here, who did not, well, nobody could comment. Actually, it would be interesting to see if she let people comment what they would comment. But you get Meghan Markle and, sorry, you missed the beginning of this. So hold on, let's go back here and let's start again. So look, he's setting the camera up for her and she should have cut that out. So she should have started right here. But no, she for an actress, she doesn't know how to edit. And so and then, like, this is Sophie's thing was so much cuter. And, like, why not dance with your husband rather than him, like, rolling into frame with his crotch and his stomach? Like, it's weird. And it's like hocking his butt. Like, why? Why? And then she keeps doing like it's just not it's not very cute in my opinion. And then we get to like the big issue. Sorry, I'm kind of pulling it out way just in case. But like this is kind of when it starts to get a little bit, like grinding to camera a little bit. And then she does the really gross thing. Well, here in a second. So, we're getting low. Oh gosh. Ugh, it's so bad. It's so bad. And then Harry briefly comes into frame. I just don't understand any of this. It's just like it wasn't even a dance. It was just kind of gross. And then we get here. I think this is when we get to the grinding and then lifting the dress up, guys. That is when because she's probably not wearing any underwear, ladies and gentlemen, because she's in a labor room. So she's not wearing a bra. She's not wearing underwear. And then she hikes her dress up, almost shows the camera her crotch and grinds. Like that is when it gets vulgar. That is when it gets vulgar. Whereas Jamie, who was made his name being on a reality TV show. Made in Chelsea, if you don't know, was a reality TV show that was kind of like The Hills in some ways. Or at least I think that was the model of it, like the British version of The Hills. And most of the people on it had were old money, connections to the aristocracy and those sorts of things. And so that is what Jamie was on. I can't quite remember what what his money came from or what his family money came from or whatever. Doesn't really matter. Either way, their dance was cute. Their dance was cute. It was short. It was kind of like it was just kind of fun. And whereas Harry and Meghan's is just vulgar and it's all about her, Meghan. Whereas for the other woman, it's like them as a couple. That's what you notice in some of those other baby mama videos too, is that it's a couple. It's not just the one. And Meghan, it was all about herself. And she should have edited out that first couple of seconds. That's how you edit things, Meghan, in case you're not aware. So yeah, and history lore, and this is true. Spencer Matthews, Pippa Middleton's brother-in-law, was on the first few series. Yes, he was on that, like him and Caggie Dunlop. That they were like the Ross and Rachel. They were kind of set up that way. And I remember one of the things that sticks out to me the most about Made in Chelsea, and it's kind of the difference between Americans and British, is that when there was a couple on there, and I still follow her on Instagram, Millie McIntosh. She was the one who was a friend of Meghan. She was best friends with Cassie Dunlap and the McIntosh family. I think they made candy or something. And she and her now husband, they were dating on the show, broke up. She actually married somebody else, and then she married her original guy from Made in Chelsea later, Hugo. And her and Hugo were having some sort of fight, and it was like so like even keel. And then all of a sudden she just throws a drink in his face and walks off. And I'm like, where did that happen? I'd like because Americans, they get or at least the tacky ones do. But she was like, they were like this, talking, and then all of a sudden, walk away. And I'm like, whoa, very different because we have like table throwing and all sorts of things in America. So, anyways, funny thing. Oh, and Laura asked Brittany, that's a cute top. Where did you get it from? It's actually a dress from the Loft. And it has a little cutout thing in the back, but it was like a long sleeveless dress. And I just was like, okay, what are we wearing today? I like dresses. So I went with that. But yeah, well, so guys, we will go ahead and kind of wrap it up. But I think it's been a crazy week. And I love that the royal family is kind of poking fun at Harry and Meghan through Instagram. That's funny. And they might have done that to Meghan's thing too. That's a crazy thing. So Diz fan says, did you see they picked a new memorial for Queen Elizabeth II? Yes, I did see that. So there are like two actually. One with her on horseback and maybe one with her and Philip. I can't quite remember. But looks to be quite a beautiful, beautiful memorial, which I think is really great. I think that's really great. So I'm really excited to see that. Thank you so much for the super chat and can't wait to see new memorials to her. And hopefully, I feel like statue making in some ways has kind of gone out of style, but I think there's something to reflecting on the legacy of Queen Elizabeth. I think it's great. So, Ott says, filming is not permitted in the palace and made very clear. Jamie's decision to disregard this rule set by its host is extremely ill-mannered and also puts the palace in a difficult position. I actually see, I understand where you're coming from, but given that they were cheeky about it, I don't think the palace was like super upset about it. And I don't think they should be. I think it's good to see that the royals can poke fun at things. I think that's good. I think that's a good thing to see. I think that was 100% a great move for them to make. And I think people loved it. Think people absolutely loved it. And yeah, Laura L says, Brittany, thanks. The dress color, it looks pretty on you. You do a great job reporting on the royals. Why, thank you. And yeah, somebody else asked what foundation I'm using to give me what I would call like the filter effect here. I feel like it's better. So it's a Tom Ford Architecture Soft Matte foundation. And it's on sale at Nordstrom Rack. And I think it's one maybe they're discontinuing because I could not find my color. And I was like, oh, I kind of want it. So I may have to track it down because I do feel like it gives me a good effect here. Because this camera lens, it picks up everything. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I will put maybe one or two things from this video, especially the Marius thing, probably up on YouTube as well, just separately. And then I will be working on a video, best and worst of the Jeff Bezos wedding. So guys, thank you again for watching. I enjoyed having you. Thank you so much for enjoying our Saturday morning together. And I shall talk to you again very soon. Bye.